Good evening, it is at the moment. This is the video that should hopefully tell you all about how the fair is run. This is designed for you, the volunteers, so that you know how we put the fair together, some of the emergency procedures we've got, and I can show you how the fair's laid out, where all the car parks are. So I'll cover all that. Hopefully it will take up a small amount of your time. I do urge you to read the emergency plan as well, because it is all written down there and we need you to be able to respond quickly and know what you're doing if we have any problems on the day. Anyway, enough of that. Right, I hope you can see where we are now. There's the 5 bells behind me. I'm going to just take you down to show you where the car parks are. There are 3 car parks. First thing, we're going to go down Skibbs Lane. I'll show you where car parks 1 and 2 are. And having hurtled down Skibbs Lane, this is car park 1, which is the largest car park we have. Currently has an electric fence in the middle of it, which should be fun. That car park gets filled first, and then we zip up to car park 2. Everyone's talking on radios, they all know what's going on. It runs like a well-oiled machine, but there you go for your information. That is car park 1. And this behind me is car park 2. So we fill that up once car park 1 is full, and when we get to the end of this one, which is normally a bit later, we then start filling in the traders car park, the traders and local residents car park. There's quite a lot of space there, and after that they have to park in the trees. And here we are at car park 3. This is where the traders and local residents park. You just go up that drive, you go round to the right, up onto the left and onto that field, and that will obviously be cut before we use it, otherwise people will lose their cars. So that's car park 3. This is the 3rd one that gets filled, and as I say, when that's filled, we don't know what they do. No idea. We don't care at that point. We've given them enough car parking spaces. They can. We've been generous enough, so we just stop at that point and call the fair full, I think. Well, here we are, the junction where 2 of the main routes come in to the fair. We've got Warren Road, and then just down here we have Chelsfield Lane. A lot of the traffic comes down here and it gets funneled back down to the junction at the bottom, which I'll show you. This is obviously the main entrance to the fair. We take down a lot of the poles down there and put our entrance there. I'm just going to run you along, show you where the exhibitors and the rear entrance is, and that's also going to be the exit in an emergency, which I'll explain later. So this is the rear entrance to the fair. So you can see we've cut it back a bit. It's not terribly good for getting large vehicles in, so if anyone wants to bring anything very large, it's not the problem with getting up here, it's the turn here on the road is very sharp. So often the larger vehicles like to go through the main entrance, but this is the rear entrance, and that will be used mainly by traders, but also in an emergency if we can't use that exit. So bear that in mind. That's down here. That'll be locked throughout the fair by and large. Will be opened if there is a need to open it. Now, before we go back to the green, I'm going to run down Maypole Road. We're going to cone this entire road off, because this is where we get into the flying display area, and we don't want any parked cars here. So one of the most important things is to keep the traffic, if it's coming from this direction, which is very little traffic, if there is traffic coming from this direction, we have to keep it flowing, because this road has to be clear. We will inspect it, but if there's a build-up of traffic, which there's never been, but if there is under the display area, we have to cancel the flying for that particular time. So I've stopped here. We're just past the hospital on the left-hand side. The reason I've stopped here is this is where our CAA flying display area starts, and it continues up there. I'm going to go up there. Again, this will all be coned off. I'm going to go up there and show you one of the main land clear areas we have for the aircraft if there is an engine failure, where they can put an aircraft down safely and walk away from it. So bear with us. So we're at the bottom of Maypole Road, just up there. This is in fact the display line for the Spitfire because it has a slightly larger distance. So the display line of the Spitfire almost crosses exactly the junction of Maypole Road, and the great advantage of that is that's the southern end of his display axis, and behind us is a lovely big field. And even though he will certainly annoy the farmer and have to pay some compensation if he has to put his aircraft down there, or indeed any of the aircraft down there, that's fairly soft, and the pilot will walk away from that, no problem at all. On the other end of the display line, sorry, did I say this is the northern end? The southern end, there is quite a lot of land, there's quite a lot of golf course that you can put an aircraft down in. So that is how we deal with the safety on it. But this is obviously an issue because if an aircraft comes down here, we have to make sure that the emergency services can get to this place, which is why we may well advise, if we have this sort of situation, we may well advise the emergency services to come down Maypole Road, to go up to the top of the M25 junction and work their way back in rather than mix it up with all our traffic. So that's what we may advise. But obviously one of the main things we mustn't do is if we have an emergency and an aircraft has gone down in this field, we mustn't have traffic coming up this road. We must keep everyone away from potentially a crash site. Anyway, enough about the surrounding roads. I've told you all about that. We're now at the rear entrance of the cricket green. So let's just go up and have a look and see an entirely empty cricket green, which is not what you will see on fair day. Right, a very empty cricket green. We have various things. We have an arena which sits about there. We have the railway that runs down that way. There are pitches all out this side. There are pitches on the other side. The beer tent sits in front of our pavilion, the green pavilion with the red roof. We have all the barbecue and the tea rooms over there, and there are pitches, obviously traders, around the central cricket green. Not much to tell you there. Most of the stalls that have most stores will probably have a fire extinguisher. The ones that are caterers certainly will. We will have fire extinguishers at the various points. So at our pavilion, the beer tent, the tea rooms, and at my commentary point, there will be fire extinguishers should you ever need to use them. Now let's just wander over and look at some of the other positions. So here we are at the end of the cricket pavilion. This is the one that the cricket team use. We don't have that open at all. It's potential they might be running some ice creams, running the mains electricity out for some ice cream stuff here, but maybe not, don't know. But we don't use that pavilion at all. We only use the village hall. And behind me here is first aid. There will be an ambulance here, plus some people in uniforms. So if you're anywhere on the green and someone has a medical emergency, if they've just fallen over or is feeling unwell, say, it's maybe very hot, maybe they're feeling very dehydrated, take them over here. That's what we're paying them for, and they will look after them. And also, if the emergency becomes more serious, they can then liaise with the emergency services so they can get an ambulance here. So they're very important. So first aid will be here. Here we are at the village hall. This is obviously used for our tea rooms. We have a set of double doors here. Now, these are not open during the fair at all because they're handling money, it's security. They can be opened in an emergency. The other thing I should draw your attention to is that we have a defibrillator here, and there are a number of people who know how to electrocute someone with one of those. On the day of the fair, if we go around the side, this area here will be fenced off. There'll be a Harris fence across here. It is possible to let someone use the disabled ramp to get into the tea room. So I'll just show you that. There's only a disabled ramp one side. So that runs up this quite a nice ramp into the tea rooms, and that'll take a manually powered wheelchair or a mobility scooter, and if they do a handbrake turn at the top, they can just about get in without spilling their tea. But this will be shut off unless someone specifically wants to. We haven't ever had anyone needing this because most people are quite happy to have their tea brought out to them. But we can use this ramp. This is by and large shut yet again, although the back of this area is of course sealed off anyway, so the public can't get to it. point out that at the far end of the hall, that's the front end, there is a outside tap, and there's one here as well, which is a bit hard to spot, but there it is. There. God, such camera work. And these will be live, so for instance, if people have got they need to fill something up for one of their stalls. I know the fun fair often fill in a pool with it during the whole of the previous day. But also people might want it for a dog bowl if they've got dogs on there. And so anyone who wants water, if you can direct them to here or the front of the hall, that would be good. This over here behind me is the Village Fair Pavilion, and that acts as a base for our equipment, so anything that we need that isn't actually out being used is in there. That's also acting as the base for the beer tender, so there's a lot of the beer paraphernalia will be in there. Around here will be a load of cooler caravans here. I think we've got more than ever in 2019, but that'll be here. Yet again, this will be shut off. This will all be fenced off here. The beer tent will run out here. And so no one can get into that pavilion other than going behind the counter of the beer tent. Now, we ought to talk about emergencies. Now, we've talked about flying emergencies. The chances are, because of the way we've laid it out, that an aircraft is very unlikely to come down in the field itself. And the aircraft are all operating several hundred metres out that way. So if there is a problem an aircraft has, more likely to be an engine failure or anything else, it will go down outside of the green. If the absolute worst happens and an aircraft does impact the corner of the green, we have to evacuate people, and the most important thing is to get people away as quickly as possible. We have to make a sensible judgment about the exit they use. If there's anything happening over there, the best thing to do is to get them out through the main gate, which will be down here. But if that's over capacity and it's safe to do so, we can let them out the rear gate. There is a footpath halfway up there going to Hewitt's. I would not recommend we use that unless there is a very, very good reason, because that is more likely to lead them towards any type of incident site. So if it lands here, that's the worst thing to happen. We will deal with it. We will get everyone away, but that is such an unlikely scenario. The more likely one, if we have anything at all, and these aircraft are very well maintained, but occasionally you have an engine failure, they will be coming down, possibly over there, possibly the other side of Court Road, but more likely to be over there because that's where the bulk of the display area is. What we'll do is we'll keep people on the field. The most important thing is to keep them here, because while they're here, they're not blocking the roads. Then the guys on the roads will be making sure that they keep the traffic away from the crash site, so not directing stuff up Bucks Cross Road towards any potential crash site. They're going to be keeping it away and also making sure we can get emergency services through. We'll be liaising on radio throughout the whole thing, so we'll work out exactly what's going to go on there. But the one thing we will do is we'll keep the fair running. If there's any entertainment we can put on, we'll put entertainment on. There is absolutely no need to stop. In fact, that can be the worst thing you can do. So what we'll do is we'll try and keep people entertained until we can assess the situation. If there is a need to stop the fair, we will stop the fair. But up until that point, we will assume that we can keep going, and the vital people who need to do the emergency stuff will be working hard. But obviously, if anything like this happens, anything goes wrong, serious goes wrong, the volunteers just want you to be absolutely on your toes and respond to everything we need you to do. Can't quite tell you what that might be. We don't know. We've never had it happen. But we've prepared for most things. And a general rule is be aware that not everybody is going to be able-bodied. There'll be people who are disabled, who are in mobility scooters, people who cannot walk as fast. Those are the people we need to look out for. We need to make sure that they're okay. So if there's any problem and you spot someone and they're not able to move as fast, pay attention to them, keep them safe. And that's it. So I'd like to invite you to read your emergency plan. Don't just base it on this video. I've covered most of what's going on there. Hopefully you've got more of an idea of how the fair runs and where everything is. If you've got any questions, just ask any of us. And I hope this video has been useful. If I'm not much mistaken, There's a pub there.